Hello again everyone, and welcome back to my Gentry build, and this is part 2 of the engine rebuild. Now what I forgot to mention yesterday, but I didn't forget it, what it was is that I had a problem with the battery on the camera, and I recorded a whole load of video showing me inserting the crankshaft into the block and putting the thrust washers in. So unfortunately the battery was recording for about 5 seconds, then would shut off, even though I was thinking I was recording. I wasn't. So I actually didn't put any of that up for obvious reasons. So what I would do after this intro, I will turn the engine over and just show you the process of installing the thrust washers, because that's quite an important aspect of the engine rebuild. So I will do that first, and then during the course of this video I want to take this off the stand and do the rear seal, and also a plug for the back, 2 plugs for the back actually. I'll need to put those in, and then I can pop this back on the stand again. And as you can see, I've now put in the front, let's turn that around, I've now put in the front plate for the engine mounting. The bolts are temporarily at the moment. I will take those off because there's a cover to go on the front of that, plus timing chain as well. So there's a fair bit to do, but I also want to do or complete the bell housing, because on that I've got to renew some bushes for the clutch operating lever, and assemble that, and I want to get that done out of the way because I've got a whole load of bits down there which I don't want to lose, and they're small little bits. So I want to get that all assembled and complete, and then at least I know the bell housing is done. So it's a slight break away from the actual engine itself, but that shouldn't take too long to do anyway. Alright, so we'll see how it goes. So see you in a minute. Bye for now. Okay, right, the bit which I missed, well I didn't miss, I did it, but I didn't put it up, was the insertion of these thrust washers on the crankshaft. Now the small block Triumphs and the 6 cylinders as well have thrust washers, which are these things like that, and you can see they've got 2 cutouts here, and that is to trap oil primarily, and the other side is plain. And they normally, or should have, a indication on here in writing what the size of the thrust washers is as regards to the thickness here. Now these are +5s, so you get standard thickness, and then you get +5, +10, +15 thou. And the reason for that is that without these there is end play going backwards and forwards like that, and you have to take that end plate up with these thrust washers, and the way you do that, you only get a half per side. So one goes here on the rear main bearing, and the other one goes here, so either side of number 3 main bearing, facing inwards against the crankshaft, the bit which revolves, in other words, so that the oil ways are against the face of the crankshaft, if that makes sense. And the way you do that, you measure this, is that you put, say, 2 standard ones in to begin with, you pop them in, and you then move the crankshaft backwards and forwards to give you an indication of how much, using a well, I've got a DTI gauge, a digital test instrument gauge, and you put it on the end here, and you move the crankshaft backwards and forwards, and that gives you the amount of play you've got backwards and forwards. The spec, there's two specs knocking around. In the manual it says 8 to 14 thou, which is a huge amount, and if you look further, there's it's a fault in the manual. That's an incorrect measurement. It should be between 4 and 8 thou, which is more feasible. The reason why you have these is that if you think about it, when you put your foot on the clutch, you're pressing against the crankshaft. Now, after so many thousands of miles of depressing the clutch, etc., you're putting wear on these thrust washers, and you have to keep a check on these thrust washers. If you start getting a sloppy clutch linkage, and there's a bit of noise coming from the engine, it's possible that these are wearing out. So you then just drop the sump, you rotate these round, and they literally fall out from the bottom. You replace them, turn them round, put the cap back on, and it traps them in place. That's a very important part of the procedure for installing the crank, is to get the correct play backwards and forwards. Now I've got this between 4 and 8 thou. It works out to about 8 thou, so I'm just on the limit. But according to the book, it should be between 8 and 14 thou. So who knows? But mine's on 8 thou, so either way, it's correct. So that's a quick explanation of the thrust washers on the Triumph 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder engines. They all basically have the same kind of fitting. That's all okay. So now I can carry on. Hopefully that will explain to you about the thrust washers very quickly. Okay, so let's crack on. So what I've got to do is to install the oil pump and the sump, but first of all I want to take this off the stand and do this rear seal here and the 2 core plugs. Then I can pop it back on the stand and do the oil pump and the sump. Okay, so I'll speak to you later. Right, hello again. So now I've got the block obviously off the engine stand and is now on the workmate. So I've put the 2 core plugs in up here, so they're nicely in. They go in very well, these core plugs, which I've got from Rimmers. You have to be careful sometimes with Rimmers as regards their products. I've just had a couple recently whereby they were wrong or didn't fit properly, but generally speaking they're very good, and if there is something wrong they're very quick to replace them. So yep, so 2 core plugs. Next thing to do is this rear oil seal for the rear end of the crank. So first thing I want to do though is, before I forget, is to pop in the bearing for the gearbox spigot, which goes in here. If I want to put this in now because I know that if I pop it on later and the plate is on, I won't be able to get that in. So I'm going to pop that in now and put a bit of masking tape over, just so that it doesn't fall out. But first of all, I need some gunk for lubrication, my engine lube. This is phosphor bronze. I'm only going to do the outside. I should do the inside when I'll put the, there we go, perfect. When I put the gearbox on, I'll just put a little dab of it on the spigot. Just pop a bit of masking tape on there, just so that it doesn't fall out. It probably won't, but I just want to be safe than sorry. And before anybody comments, I won't forget to take the masking tape off. Easily done, I know. Right, so that's all nice and secure. So next job is to put the seal on here. Now what it is, it's an aluminium casting. You take the old one off and then you knock this seal out from behind that way. You knock that through and you tap in from this side the sorry, I'm not showing you it. That's the aluminium casing, and you can see this orange seal here, which is the bit which you get replaced. So when you've got that, you knock this one out from that side, you knock it out that way and you put it in that way, so the lip of the seal is facing inwards, so any oil has to go past that lip. Okay, so lip inwards, not outwards. And then that gets put on there. But first of all, I need to find the gasket. So I'll just shut the camera down and find the gasket. Bear with me. Okay, found the gasket, so I need to put on some gasket sealer. So then if I stick that on there, like that, I'll just put a bolt in there, I think, to hold it. And then I can put some on this side. And if I take the bolt out, I can then turn it round, and then that's both sides done. Put that bolt back in. It's just to stop it moving around, that's all, falling down. And then paint this side. Okay, and then what I want to do is paint gasket sealer on this face, and that then gives me all the surfaces. That's that coated. Before I put any, just give that a wipe. Before I put any, put the seal on, I just want to make sure that I've got some lubrication for the seal. You don't want any moving parts like this starting up dry, as I keep saying. Lovely jubbly. Right, now we should be able to slip that on. Oh, take bolt out first. Actually, I don't think I've got the right bolts. Bear with me, I'll come back. Right, okay, I've found the correct bolts now. So there's 7 altogether, and they're torqued down to, it's quite low, it's 20 foot-pound. There we go. So that's that job done. So we have the 2 core plugs completed and fitted. I've put sealant around them, on both of them, on all the core plugs, that is. The rear crankshaft seal and the spigot. So this can now go back onto the engine stand, and then we can progress. Next job will be, first thing is to plug up the 4 oil ways, holes. I will do that next, and then I think what I would do is to put the oil pump in and the sump pan, and then that'll be the bottom end complete. Okay, so I'll see you in a minute. Hello again. Right, so now we're going to be doing the oil pump to go in here and putting the gasket on for the sump, and then putting the sump on. And over here, I'll just walk around here a little bit. Hopefully over here I've got all the parts necessary for the assembly. So I've got the sump with the gasket. I've got the nuts, sorry, the bolts for bolting the sump onto the gasket. There's 4 longer bolts, as there's a reinforcing plate here and here, which is on the underside, so it thickens up this plate here. So that's what the 4 longer bolts are for. The rest are for around here. Oil pump, Loctite, engine lube, and gasket cement and spanners, and that's about it. So hopefully this will all go according to plan. Famous last words again, and we'll see if we can get that fitted. Okay, so I'll pop you on the tripod and we can start. See you in a minute. Now, I may get my hands in the way of what I'm doing, but it's very difficult to try and show you every single thing without me getting my hands in the way. So you'll have to just bear with me on that. The other thing I want to point out is that when I put the plate on for the rear oil seal, I omitted putting the Loctite on the bolts. So I've redone those again, torqued them all down again to 20 foot-pound, but with Loctite on. And the other thing which I failed to mention was obviously the bottom of the plate here has to be flush, so that there's no possible leakage from the sump around here. So again, just make sure that, just like this one over here, just make sure that that is nice and level with the block. So Loctite on the bolts and flush on here. I forgot about that, sorry, but it's all done now. Right, so we need to just clean that base. Of any gunge. That's a technical term, by the way, gunge, in case you didn't know. Right, that's clear. There is no gasket for the oil pump, it just sits straight on there with 3 bolts. There's no, in the manual, there is no torque setting for these, so I'm just going to nip it up. They're very small, these bolts, so I'm not going to do them too tight, but tight enough, and with some Loctite then that should be okay. But I'm going to put, because there's no gasket as such, I'm going to put some gasket sealer on there. Won't do any harm. But first I think I'll get the oil pump out. Now this is a new oil pump. I didn't want to chance by the old one, but having said that, I am trying to reuse as much of the old original equipment as I possibly can. But on this, I thought it'd be wise to get a new one. So that's how it comes. That's the oil pump, and it obviously goes in that way. And that's the shaft which connects onto the distributor drive. So let's take these red stoppers off and take it apart. And the oil pump itself consists of the body, an external rotor and an internal rotor, and as you can see the way it drives, it compresses, oil comes in, and as it turns round it compresses, and as it compresses it shoots it out through the hole in here, which then pushes it around the engine. So it's a very simple mechanical pump, very much like the rotary engine actually, in principle the way it works. So this needs to be taken apart and lubricated as we assemble it. Now there is a spec for, it's about 1/4 hour I think, between this top edge and the outer rotor. The inner and outer rotors should be flush anyway, but that is just a fraction set below this body. So again, just going to put a smidgen of this gasket sealer around here, because the more I seal this up, and to stop any leakages, then, or bypass really rather than leakages, then a better flow I'll have around the engine rather than it seeping out around the edges. And then feed the bolts through. And hopefully they will line up, which they do. Perfect. Right, I need to get the spanner, which I haven't got. which is a 7/16, so bear with me. I can't use the socket on there because I can't get into, I can do those two but I can't get to that one, so it's going to have to be a open-ended, but it only needs to be nipped up anyway. Right, hello again. So that's me finished for the day. It's Monday, so my plan was to get all this in the car, or in the chassis should I say, for the weekend. All going according to plan so far. As you can see, there's a fair bit completed now from when I last put the video up, my last clip rather. So I've got all this lot on now, cleaned it all up. I'm using the old distributor for the time being, but I will get electronic ignition on here eventually. But I want to start it off with the old points system. There are reasons. I just prefer to work with points, something mechanical I can see and adjust. And then once I've got it running, it's up and I know this is okay, then I can put the electronic ignition on. So what have we got? Oil pressure relief valve, oil pressure sensor, fuel pump, distributor and the oil filter. So that's pretty much all this side done. I've got the alternator coming tomorrow hopefully, so I can possibly fix that on once I've got the water pump mounted on the front here. The cylinder head is on, but it's not bolted down yet. I've just put it on here to protect and stop stuff falling inside. I will lift this off tomorrow. I've got to do some more research really as to whether I put sealing compound on the gasket, and there's arguments, unbelievable, discussions should I say, not arguments, discussions of whether you use the sealant on the head gasket or not, and I want to try and get an affirmative on whether I use it or not. At the end of the day it's my choice whether I use it, but I just want to research it a bit and see if there's any definite downsides or upsides to using it. So head is going on tomorrow. I've put the cam followers in. I haven't put the push rods in yet. I will do that tomorrow. Then we can bolt the head down. This is the lifting eye ready for it. I will explain all this tomorrow. So we're not far off. I've got the timing and the timing chain to do. Whether I get that done tomorrow or not, I don't know. But the cam rotates nicely. Distributor turns with the cam, so that's all connected. And the good news is, the really good news, is that in 2 weeks' time, not this weekend, but the following weekend, the actual kit arrives. Cool. Been waiting for that, and I can't believe I've actually got a date for it to be delivered now. But it's not this weekend, following weekend. Next weekend I'm going up to see the kit before it's delivered, just to make sure I'm happy with it all, and then John can make any final alterations before he delivers it. So that's an absolutely fantastic piece of news, because that has worked in precisely to how I planned it. With this going in hopefully at the weekend with the gearbox, I've got a new slave cylinder there now finished for the clutch. I've got to work on that during the middle part of next week for the clutch assembly. to go on. Not there, here. Rear plate. Yeah, and then by the weekend drop it into the chassis, hopefully. Okay, so that's about it for now, and I will see if I can do another video tomorrow once I've finished off here. So it should be all this lot finished, the top end. Bottom end's done, top end to finish off. Okay, hopefully speak to you tomorrow. Bye for now. Bye.